Good afternoon. I'm Stephanie Kashima, Rossier OCL doctoral student class of 2021. My dissertation is focused on an evaluation of African American student completion rates at Hillside College and the administrator knowledge, motivation, and organizational influence changes needed to close the achievement gap. I would like to thank each of you on my committee for taking the time today to view my presentation. My problem of practice is the college performance gap in producing differential program completion outcomes for African American students in comparison to other demographic groups such as Asian American and white students. A key factor for choosing this problem of practice is the inherent inequity in publicly funded institutions of higher education, producing divergent outcomes for students of different racial groups. The importance of this problem of practice is the societal impact on the African American community resulting from low college completion rates. Low completion rates are tied to higher poverty rates, higher mortality rates, and higher incarceration rates. In addition, these inequities are a violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which bars race-based discrimination at federally funded institutions. The organization under evaluation is Hillside College, a pseudonym for a Northern California two-year college. The organizational goal is to produce African American completion rates equal to the demographic with the highest completion rates. The specific performance gap data show a 20 percentage point difference between Asian American students and African American students at the college. Although there are many stakeholders involved in this problem of practice, limited time and resources have led me to select the single stakeholder group of college administrators due to their ability to shift culture and outcomes. There are 4 project questions. The first is, to what extent is Hillside College meeting the goal of closing the completion achievement gap for African American students by spring 2020? The second is, what is the stakeholder knowledge and motivation related to the goal of closing the completion achievement gap for African American students by spring 2020? The third is, what is the interaction between organizational culture and context and stakeholder knowledge and motivation? And the fourth is, what are the recommendations for organizational practice in the areas of knowledge, motivation, and organizational resources? The conceptual framework of this evaluation study is the Clark and Estes Gap Analysis Framework assessing the gaps in knowledge, motivation, and organizational influences needed to achieve the organizational goal. This slide shows a graphic representation of the conceptual framework for this study. In the Clark and Estes model, the combination of closing the gap between current and desired organizational influences and knowledge and motivational influences are assumed to lead to the achievement of the organizational goal of closing the achievement gap. The organization set goal is based on Estella Ben-Simon's equity mindset model, in which the institution must provide adequate training in theory and practices in the equity mindset. The conceptual knowledge required is to understand the factors which contribute to non-completion by African American students. The procedural knowledge needed is best practices in improving African American completion rates. The motivation needed by administrators is that they must believe they are capable of addressing this completion gap. And lastly, they must believe that the completion gap is a result of administrator action or inaction. Data will be collected through 1-hour interviews with 12 administrators who are deans and vice presidents at the college. There are a couple of notable limitations to the data collection, which include an unknown and possibly low response rate to the interview requests. This will be addressed through the use of gift cards as incentives for participation. A second possible limitation is the use of my workplace as the study site. Because all of the administrators being studied report to me, I will have an external interviewer conduct the interviews and will have no contact with the stakeholders during data collection in regard to this study. I would like to acknowledge my dissertation chair, Dr. Brian Adibe, for his support and mentorship during this process, and Dr. Carrie Rieger for her helpful edits leading up to the current process. Here are the sources referenced in this presentation. Thank you for your time and attention. This concludes my presentation.